Welcome to It's a Woman's World, a show which discusses any and all topics under the sun that are of interest to women worldwide. Here's Nadia Jordana.
Hello and welcome to It's a Woman's World. I'm Nadia Jordana and our topic today is Power of Purpose. Our guest is Jamela Pettiford. Let's go talk to her and find out what Power of Purpose is all about. Beverly Crosby, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here today and to talk to Jamela about this wonderful program. Actually, several different programs, it sounds like, that she offers people.
I'm glad you joined us. Susan Strauss, Dr. Susan Strauss. Hi.
Hi, I too am delighted. This is one of my favorite topics. I read a book years ago called The Power of Purpose, and it was a spiritual thing. It wasn't religious, and it just touched me. So I'm very anxious to hear what Jamala has to say.
And Jamela,
Yes.
you're with the YWCA, and we're talking today about one of the programs you're involved in. I have one thing that might be interesting. I know that you're a musician and a singer, but what is, with regard to this program, you're also a people builder. How does that apply?
Well, I'm with the YWCA St. Paul, and I started off contracting for the first 5 years. I was providing classes really to help our folks to really change their mindset towards being different and living their lives really by design and not from one crisis to the next crisis, and really helping our people to understand that they can take charge of their life. It's a program that I wrote many years ago. I want to say even 2001, and it was inspired by The Power of Purpose that was written by Richard. And from that, I spawned this program and began to write a curriculum. And in the curriculum, I began to really dive deep to the root causes of why people make the decisions that they do continuously over and over and over again. And then adding the cultural competence piece, really understanding historical trauma and really understanding how that conditioning modifies our behavior and some of the ways that we behave and carry ourselves. And so with the YWCA St. Paul, I'm the manager of employment services and special services within the organization now. And we serve over 400 African-American families.
Wow.
And what we call employment services. However, we do more than just employment. You know, we do from homelessness to domestic violence to chemical dependency to two-generational approach, you name it. And really, it started with me providing these classes. And what was beginning to happen is people were beginning to change. People were beginning to go to college. People were beginning to get off of welfare. People were beginning to modify their behavior. And they said, wow, you really created something that's really effective. Can you, rewrite our program and train our staff to be effective in the way that they provide counseling and coaching services? And so I did that in 2019. And then from there, the person who was in this position that I'm in now retired. And they said, you should just take the job, And of course, you kind of play the role of, hard to get. But I'm so glad that I stepped in and said yes, because it's such powerful, impactful, innovative work.
So how many people, do you serve? Maybe would it be best to say, for example, in a month or in a year? And do people come and go? And if they need more support, they'll come in? Or maybe you can talk about that a little bit more. And even a little bit about, you mentioned some about the demographics, but what's the range of demographics?
So we serve only African-American families. We're a culturally competent program in partnership with Ramsey County. So we provide services for folks that are in the Minnesota Family Investment Program, and they are on assistance at this time.
Okay.
And a part of being on assistance is that you have to work with an employment counselor. The whole goal is for you to become stable enough to take care of yourself. MFIP gives participants 5 years years, which is 60 months, to go through this process of rehabilitation. Now, because we're serving African American families and we know how much disparities come with that, most of our families are on extensions, which means that they've been on MFIP longer than 60 months due to some type of, whatever their situation may be. Okay,
The pandemic? I mean,
no, not just the pandemic. It could be that they have some developmental delays. It could be that their children are not, able to read or have physical disabilities, right? Or they're unemployable due to some levels of mental health or trauma. The list goes on and on. Domestic violence. It could be a number of things. But because we're serving only African American families, we tend to have a higher number of families that are on extensions, which is a part of kind of the levels of disparities historically with African American families. We serve families that are the 24 all the way up. And so on average, they have about 2 children. And we serve not only the mother, but sometimes they're in partnerships with their husbands or boyfriends. And we serve single fathers who are also raising their children and are needing that assistance at this time. And
Great.
what's nice, and so what's nice is we focus on engagement, education, employment, and employment retention to help our families to really get to a place where they can eventually get off of MFIP and live life by design.
Okay, so the first step, getting people to really understand that there are opportunities for them, that they actually can move forward. You're really working with their belief system in many cases as well, because I'm sure there's people who come in who probably think, I can't do this, I don't want to do it, it's too much work, I'm not smart enough.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit
All
about
of it.
that.
And that's where I came up with the power of purpose. When I was working many years ago, I've been doing this work now for 20 years. And when I started many years ago, I was working with dually diagnosed adults, chemically dependent, mentally ill, long-term homeless with children. And what I was noticing with our programs is that our programs was not effective because it was not, we kept seeing this recidivism. People just keep falling off and keep falling off. And I began to read this book about how you begin to find purpose and how purpose brings about a life in people. And many times, because of the things that they have experienced, this is generational. It's not just present. So mom, was also, poor and didn't have and wasn't educated. So it's kind of this perpetual thing. And so what I began to realize is when you go to the root cause of the pain and really unpack the power of pain, really unpack it and help people to see themselves in real time. I think a lot of times people are not seeing themselves in real time. They're not understanding that what they're doing is generational. And so in this process, I began to learn that I have to change the mindset of people. Many times I was spinning my wheels, and I was an employment counselor, for a long time. And I was spinning my wheels, getting people jobs, and they'd only keep it for 2 weeks and they'd quit. And I'm like, what is going on? Well, it was because it was that deep-seated thing of, like you said, this worthiness, this self-esteem of just understanding that life is bigger than just a job. How do you find true divine purpose in what it is that you're called to do? And you weren't just born to just be here and take up space. And so really going down, and then we break down the family. I break down their father's side. I break down their mother's side. I break down their grandparents and see what are the behaviors, both good and bad, that you have picked up on, and what do you walk in agreement with? A lot of our families have walked into agreement that they're not smart enough, that they can't do it, that they're unable, they're poor, they're Black, they're this, they're that. And so they have bought into this and they walk in agreement with it. And so one of the things I begin to do is to teach them how to make a new agreement with themselves.
How do you do that?
Well, you begin by really dealing in the area of spirit. I mean, it really deals with their spirit and how they see themselves and their world. I really begin to go to the true essence of who they are. And I begin to talk about purpose in a different way. I begin to talk about purpose in a cultural way. And folks, many times they're like, I've never thought about life like this. I never thought that I could think differently, and beginning to start that process. And many times it begins with forgiveness.
of whom? Themselves or their past generations? Excuse me.
Yes, no problem. It
Excuse
begins
me.
with themselves, but then also many times they're walking in unforgiveness because maybe their mother wasn't there. Maybe their family allowed them to be abused. Maybe they went through homelessness every 4 years and they were homeless and they were out on the street. And so everything that they had was taken from them. Maybe they had an alcoholic father or they were molested, right? And so we have so many layers, complex layers of issues where folks are really carrying all of these things with them everywhere they go. And
They
so
really, they really, they
So you're
really
really a
are. And one of the things I was thinking of, and it probably fits into some of the things that you've been saying, but I think about even when I was a young person and everything was going wrong, you get into simple survival mode
yes.
and it's tunnel vision. Nothing else matters except that one very next thing. And it's really hard to get out of that. That's really a rut. How do you get people to start looking up and looking forward? Which one of some of the things that you mentioned are help with that issue?
Well, one of the things I began to do is to start to really help them to see where are you as opposed to where you want to be. And many times they'll say, I've always wanted to be this. I just never thought that I could. And so we begin to work on self-esteem. Most of the time I find it's worthiness. It truly is self-esteem stuff. It's their own personal mind that speaks to them and tells them they can't do it. So I really begin to unpack, what is it that you believe about yourself? What is it that you believe about your family? And many times it is their belief system that was given to them, this conditioning of understanding, I'll never be more than this. And this is just enough. This will do. Just being right here is good enough. But then when I begin to say, okay, but then you have to constantly ask for help. You have to constantly report to us. You have to constantly give us all of your personal business and your information. Is that really what you want? Many times they're like, no, I don't like that at all. Okay, there we go.
So,
Now we can begin.
Jamela, don't they, and I apologize, I pronounced your
Sure.
name incorrectly the first time. I was
Sure.
wrong, use the other A. Don't people then, when you delve into all of this, et cetera, and you're helping them learn about their purpose, don't they sometimes just feel, overwhelmed? How can I even let go of all of this and move in the direction that I want to go?
Yes, absolutely. They feel overwhelmed. Absolutely. They absolutely feel overwhelmed. But see, we work at a holistic approach. The holistic approach is that you need now to go and seek mental health care. Seek mental health care, begin to start working out, begin to eat differently, begin to hang around different friends, begin to, a lot of times our women will maintain men who they know that don't love them, but it's just to have somebody for comfort. Begin to start changing the way that you live your everyday life. I begin to break down their daily habits, their daily behaviors, and help them to see what it is like. Many times I have to work in the areas of communication. Do you know how to talk? Do you know how to say what is on your mind? What is going on with you? What is happening to you? We have to do it that way because many times in the African American community, because of all of the things that have happened to us in the medical field, many times our families do not trust therapists. They do not trust sharing the intimate details of their families, partly because of how they were victimized, over the years. If they share that they're experiencing not feeling like a good parent, then child protection comes in and takes their children, right? And so there are all of these different layers of disparities that African American families face. And it's very real. I mean, it's very real things. And so oftentimes when I'll say, you need to seek mental health care. Well, I don't want to talk to white people. I only want to talk, to people who look like me. Okay, well then let's find a therapist that's an African American therapist so that you can share your experiences. But you need to share with someone, even if it's the church. Like growing up, the Black church was very instrumental. So we would go talk to the mother of the church, or we talk to the pastor's wife and share the details of what's going on in our home if we didn't trust government officials because of how they, would victimize us and take over our families and take over our homes. And so a lot of times that has been the driving factor of why our families don't seek help.
It's understandable that they wouldn't want to see a white therapist. I mean, how could a white person even begin to understand what a Black person has. I mean, there's no way.
No, there isn't.
Okay, let me ask a question, if I can. So it's very, I mean, it sounds very rewarding and
It
sometimes
is.
very frustrating, both at the same time. So when you get them beyond those first stages and they feel a little more confident or they're willing to let go of the past, what's the next step? Where do you take them from there?
So then we start taking small steps. We do, an assessment. In the assessment, we begin to understand, okay, what do you look like on paper? What does your credit look like? What is your educational background? Do you have a high school diploma or a GED? Okay, what is your criminal record? So we begin to look at them, what they look like on paper, and we begin to show them themselves on paper. And many times they'll say, I would like to be able to make $60,000 a year. Okay, what's your educational level? Well, I need to go to high school. Okay, so let's start there. And we're hopeful for them, with them. And what's good about this is that when they are in these programs, because they are a part of this, they're able to go to school for free many times because they are low income or have no money at all. And so we begin there. We start with the GED or high school diploma. Then from there, we'll send them to an empowerment class, so that they can understand their self-worth. What do they want to do? We'll help them to do some career investment and research so they can understand what kind of work do they want to do, what makes them excited every day. And so we start with baby steps, small accomplishments. And what's so funny is I've taught my staff that, we have to praise even the smallest of things. Getting your driver's license for some people, we make it big because they've sat without a driver's license for so long, and that's why they couldn't get a job. Or they didn't have their social security card. I mean, just basic documents that they need to be able to navigate the world, they won't have. And so we'll start there. I mean, we start with just the very bare minimums oftentimes.
How,
Achievements.
oh, go ahead, Beverly.
No, I was just going to say little steps of achievements.
Little steps.
Well,
Yeah.
How do you keep people on track with accountability? It's so easy to say you're going to do something and you're going to do this and you need to. But then when it comes right down to it, how do you keep people accountable?
Well, there's a couple of ways. Number one, I remind them of what it is they told me. Because I remind them, when we are working with you as employment counselors through the county, I can't work harder at building your life than you. This has to be important to you. I work here. This is your real life. And so if we partner, and that's why we call all of our folks that we work with participants, because it makes it clear that we are in a partnership together. You provide a part and I provide a part. This is a relationship and I can't do this without you. And so we keep people engaged by reminding them, and we keep it real. And what's nice is because we serve African-American families, and most of my staff are African-American, we are able to speak culturally truth, whereas many times, if they were working with other folks, they'll say, oh, that's good for you. And we will let them know, no, that's not good for you. If you're 48 years old and you're working at Little Caesars, with other 15-year-old folks and you've got grandchildren, no, that's not good for you. What you can do something else. What can we help you to get to? And it just really is about, one thing I notice about African-American families is it really is about pride in some cases. And when you begin to break down the levels of pride that sometimes are not real, it's not a real level of pride. It's kind of a false sense of pride that kind of hides behind this insecure, I look like something, but it's not really. We begin to pull that away. And we begin to say, okay, you're 35, you don't have a high school diploma. What are we going to do? What are we going to do?
How do you measure success, Jamela?
We measure success by when folks begin to make movements in their life. When we get them, oftentimes they haven't had, any high school diploma, and they've been on, MFIT for 2 years. And we're like, oh no, we're going to start right there. So we start measuring success by when folks start to get things completed, when we start to see their children in therapy, when we start to see them in therapy, when we start to see them making different choices for themselves and then following through on what they say they're going to do. One of the last questions that I asked in my Power of Purpose class was, you Can you love yourself enough to be good to you?
Wow.
Can you learn to be good to yourself? We have learned to be good to everyone else, especially African-American women. We have this Black woman complex, right? This superwoman, she could do everything, you know? It's not true. And that's what's keeping us down, and that's what's keeping us behind, because we're trying to do everything for everyone else when we need to stop for a second and look at all of the pain and the issues that we're addressing and facing many times alone, in pain alone.
So have you been able, that's measuring success for the individual. Have you started, and I know you've not been in the role that long, but are you measuring success of the program?
Absolutely. We have a report card that we have to do every year with the county. And in the pandemic, I started in December 2019. And so we went into a pandemic, all of our staff went to working at home. And so we had to get creative. So we have a monthly program calendar. And so I provide 3 classes a week. Plus, you know, we have our education classes and our other classes that we have going on. In the pandemic, we did 90% engagement.
Really?
Where most organizations were at 20%.
Oh my gosh.
And Ramsey County asked me, they said, how are you doing this? And it's truly about, I really took the time to train my staff on how to reach people who want to receive reconciliation, to authentically build relationships, not task-driven relationships, but authentic relationships. And that's one thing that's different about African-American folks too, is that you can't come to me with tasks, you can't be fake. We read that a mile away. You have to be authentic and really want to invest in who I am. Otherwise, we won't open up to you. We won't share the truth of who we are. And so when our families and when our staff begin to build authentic relationship, the truth begins to come out. And then in that truth, we build on that.
You develop a trust relationship.
It's a trust. It has to be trust, because we've been hurt so much in this country. We don't trust many. We don't trust folks. And so we won't share if we don't trust you. We'll be mute. It'll just be like, okay, whatever. And we'll come and get as much as we can. But what I've taught my staff is that it's an exchange for an exchange. So if they come seeking this and need help this, okay, perfect. This is what I need you to do. So oftentimes when our families are in crisis, we say, perfect, we're going to help you to pay your rent. Awesome. But this is what you're going to do. You're going to start to sign up for classes, and you're going to start to go to school, and you're going to get a certificate. Okay. Yeah. Because this is an exchange for an exchange. We're in partnership together.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of accountability like Nadia was talking about, because, you know, you can encourage somebody. You can make them accountable. You can say, no, you need to do this. And with some people, that's the way you need to speak to them. You know, others, you know, they'll feel pushed. They'll say, no, don't tell me what to do. There's all these different layers of issues that you have to deal with. And so I imagine at times it can become quite frustrating, because you see the potential in someone, and there at times has to be a time where you have to let them go. There's nothing else you can offer until they decide.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And in this work, I'm so grateful for my support system. In this work, there has been many times where my heart has been broken, where, you know, we tried everything we could. And I remember one time it was a Saturday morning, and I woke up and I called my dad, and I was just fit to be tied, because one of our ladies would not give up a man who was a known sex offender, and she couldn't have both. She couldn't have her children and the man, you know, and she chose the man, you know, over her children. And I had built a relationship with her children and fallen in love with her children, you know. And I remember calling my dad, and I just could not stop weeping, because just the thought that you would do this, you know, as a woman, as a mother, you know. And my dad said something to me that was just so powerful, and that's become my mantra, you know, in this work. He said, you are a vehicle, Jamela. And you give people a ride for as long as they want to ride. But the moment they tell you to stop and let them out, you stop and you let them out. And he said, and this is the key point, you have to keep on driving.
Powerful.
Yeah.
And that has been my motto in this work, is that I will help you for as long as you are wanting the help. But at the time that you say, I don't want your help, I'm done, leave me alone, I let them go. And I keep on.
This is a good point to, we have about 5 minutes. Well,
Okay.
no, about 3 or 4 minutes left.
Okay.
To ask you if there's anything we haven't asked you where you could share some words of wisdom with us.
Well, I think in this work, there's so many people who are hurting, especially now. There's so many people who are without loved ones and support systems, and they're really standalone women and men who are raising children in their home, and they're struggling with alcoholism. I think more than anything, kindness, just true, unbiased, unjudgmental kindness is what gets people to listen and to want to be a part of what you have going on. And so if there's anything that I could say that I think would be beneficial to folks who might be thinking about working with people in this demographic, in this area of work, is to have an understanding that kindness really will get people to open up and to share with you their truth. And in that moment, sit with them and help them to understand that you are in partnership with whatever they decide, and that this is the picture that they get to paint, and you are just there to observe whatever they put on the canvas of their life.
Oh,
Very rewarding, I'm sure.
It is. It is. And I
is.
absolutely love it. And I've never felt overwhelmed except for that one time. And then I've been like, okay, folks get to choose to live how they want to live.
And you
But
can't
Jamela,
help everybody.
We applaud what you've been doing. That is really fantastic. It probably takes a lot out of you, but you get
At
so
times.
much back, and so does everyone else. And thank you, Beverly, for joining us today on the show. And Susan, I always am so excited to hear your questions.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all next time on It's a Woman's World. Thank you for watching us today.